Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Hey, welcome to this special edition of the Note Closure Show. The Q1 2024 foreclosure report just recently came out, and we're going to spend today's episode diving into what it disclosed, the numbers, what states are facing more foreclosures. Is it up? Is it down? What's going on? And I thought you guys might find this very interesting, as I did. So let's dive into the deep dive, the numbers, the meats and potatoes of what the foreclosure report disclosed, maybe what it didn't disclose either, too. Some of the things that concerns me that it didn't report on. But anyway, let's dive into it. Basically, the foreclosure report is released by Attom. If you don't know what Attom is, it's a data solutions company. It really reports on most of the major markets across the country. Literally about 99% of the population is covered in the report. And they're pulling data from over like 3,000 counties across the United States. And their report that came out just a week ago, roughly less than a week ago, reveals a market in transition. Now, is it transitioning for the good or the bad? I'll let you be the judge of that, because I think it is totally dependent on what market you're in, where you're located, and what state. There's a whole lot of different things going on. You can't make a blanket statement that, oh, the market's great or the market's horrible or we're not going to see a fail or 2008 all over again. Let me clarify that. We're not going to see a 2008 all over again, but the market is stressed. Yes, it's in a bit of a transition. We all know this, with rates continue to stay the same and rates not coming down. People have a hard time paying bills. Things are more expensive. It's definitely an interesting report, and let's dive into it for you. So anyway, the overwhelming number one thing that the foreclosure report discussed is that there were 95,000 plus foreclosure filings. That's right. Foreclosure filings. All right. And that is actually down just under 1% year over year from 2023 numbers, but it is actually up 3% from Q4. So Q1 is down from last year's numbers just a little bit, about 1%, but it's actually up 3% from Q4, 95,000 filings, foreclosure filings. All right. So that's something to keep in mind. Yes, it means, the way I look at it, it's a little bit worse than last year. Okay. Definitely, as we start seeing a trending aspect of it going up here into Q2. The biggest thing that came out of this was in Q1 2024's foreclosure data reveals a market in transition with slight increases in filings and starts alongside a notable decrease in REO properties, explains Rob Barber, who's the CEO over at Attom. Okay. While foreclosures remain relatively stable, we're closely monitoring these trends. Homeowners continue to hold significant equity, contributing to a persistently hot housing market. Now, hot housing market seems a little strange because it's definitely cooled down in the last year. So I'm not sure what Rob was talking about. That, yeah, we're still not seeing a lot of foreclosures, but that's also because he's putting a blanket statement across the country. Every state is a little bit different, and we are seeing some increased foreclosures in specific states, and that kind of surprised me. All right. Now, the starts in Q1, as we talk about foreclosure starts, not those that went through, but it was basically just over 65,600 foreclosure starts took place in January, February, March of this year. Okay. Now that's up 4% year over year. Okay. And it's up 2% from Q4. So what does it tell you? Things are getting a little bit worse than last year in the foreclosure starts. That means what? People aren't being able to pay their mortgage. And the banks, the lenders are starting to start the foreclosure process. Definitely. And it's the biggest things out there. And what it did is it pulled the numbers based on states that had more than 100 plus starts in Q1 of 2024. Now, New Hampshire saw a 43% increase in foreclosure starts. Illinois saw an increase in 26%. God's waiting room, Florida, increased by 22%. All right. Rhode Island, 21%. And then Nevada saw an increase in 16% in foreclosure filings. Okay. So if you're living in New Hampshire, that's the worst and the biggest increase in foreclosure starts. All right. Think about that. New Hampshire, Illinois, Florida, Rhode Island, and Nevada. Those were the 5 states that had more than 100. Okay. Those were the biggest, I guess you could say, culprits of foreclosure starting to take place again in Q1. All right. Now, the foreclosure rates. This is one that's always concerning you to look at things. Okay. Basically, Across the United States, we saw one in every 1,478 houses across the USA start to have a foreclosure. Okay, one in every basically just under 1,500. It was worse in Delaware. Delaware had basically one in 894 homes had a foreclosure start. New Jersey had one in every 919. South Carolina saw one in every 929. Nevada had one in every 961. And then God's waiting room, as I used to joke about, Florida, the Sunshine State, had one in every 973. So that tells you, if you look at those, several judicial, one non-judicial, starting to see that foreclosure roll across there. And I always talk about how the foreclosure markets, especially in the United States, is like a domino effect. You're going to have some states that tumble earlier, have faster foreclosure rates, some that drag out a little bit, depending on what's going on. I think the states that drag out the most, like Florida, New Jersey, for a couple examples, even South Carolina is a year to foreclose, is that it gives people a little bit more time to come to the table, maybe make some things to sell a property versus a faster state like Texas or Georgia, where it's going to happen pretty quickly. Okay, now the biggest markets, the top 5 markets, and this is what I don't like about this report a little bit. It states this is among the 224 markets with populations of 200,000. So if you live in a city that has less than 200,000, you're not in the top 5 based on Attom. Now, I would love for them to go back and done 100K plus, and I think it would give you some different numbers. But the 5 markets that are seeing the most amount of foreclosure starts, okay, Columbia, South Carolina, it's one in every 569. Spartanburg, South Carolina, one in every 597 homes. Lakeland, Florida, one in every 624. Atlantic City is not really a surprise because that's been distressed for a while, but one in every 628. And then Cleveland, Ohio, the Browns, all right? Home of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, where you're having a home of the hard knocks when it comes to foreclosures started. Basically, one in every 662 is facing a foreclosure action. Okay, so Columbia, South Carolina, Spartanburg, South Carolina, Lakeland, Florida, Atlantic City, and then Cleveland. So you're living in those areas. Hey, you're probably going to see some more distressed stuff hitting the market. If you're an investor in those areas, you're looking for distressed deals, there you go. Maybe you're looking at the foreclosure listings or the foreclosure filings to find potential borrowers in trouble. Okay. Something to think, if you're, these are the things about it. Like I said, all of those 5 cities are in 4 states. They're all judicial foreclosures. The longest would be New Jersey, has the longest foreclosure process. Florida would probably be, Florida would be second. South Carolina would be third, and Ohio would be the 4th longest of those 5 cities. Okay, moving on. Now, if you start looking at completed foreclosures, these are REOs, where the lender or the bank finished the foreclosure. Okay, this is that foreclosure to tsunami we're all hoping for. All those real estate investors hoping to see a wave of foreclosures hit the market. There was just over 10,000 completed foreclosures, or new real estate owned properties to hit the market, or basically where the banks finished the foreclosure, took it to the auction, and it became an REO. Basically, the bank probably took it back, or they sold it at the auction. Now that's up 7% from Q4. All right, that's up. It's also, this is the interesting thing, it's down 20% year over year. Okay, so it's down from 2023 in this time last year in Q1. All right, that's fine, but it's up from Q4. So what we've seen that trend a little bit scooping up, because I don't like to look, I mean, it's great to know what we were, a year ago and 5 years ago. But you look at the numbers 4 years ago, we were in the middle of COVID, everything came to a screeching halt. Okay. And that's where you look at, you're starting to see increased numbers in the last 90 days, 120 days. The states with the most foreclosures that took place, Michigan was number 1 with 1,049 foreclosures that finished up. California was number 2 with 845. Pennsylvania, number 3 with 838. Okay. Illinois had 810. And Texas, the Lone Star State, 596. These were REOs, total foreclosures that took place in Q1 of 2024. Now, 596, yes, we'll have stuff across the country, but I'd be willing to bet that the big chunk of that in Texas was in Harris County, which is it's the biggest county in Texas. It's where Houston is, and always seems to lead. I mean, it's always got the county with the most amount of foreclosures scheduled, stuff like that. So that was just in Q1, had 596 that took place, that didn't get delayed. The can didn't kick down the road, but took place in Q1. Okay. Foreclosure timeframes. Okay, so this is something to think about that they evaluated and found out. They found out that the time to foreclose increased by 2% in Q1. Now that's they found it to be a 736-day average. That's blanket across the country, higher in some states, lesser in obviously a chunk of them as well. They also, the time to foreclose decreased by 20% year over year. Okay. So that, let me rephrase that because this will be a little confusing. Time to foreclose increased by 2% in Q1, which is it increased to a 736-day average, basically increased by about 14 days. Okay. And the time to foreclose actually decreased by 20% when you look at year over year. Okay. So it's been the same since 2020, but that's now changed. It's actually gone down a little bit as far as the decreased number, but that's okay. That doesn't really surprise you. Things is modifications, loan forbearance agreements, all that kind of stuff will kind of kick the can. Okay. The states that had the longest time frame, this is something you would probably, as a note investor, you would take a lot of notice at. It's like, aha, do I want to avoid these states with the long foreclosure time frames? Louisiana, longest time to foreclose. On average, it took 2,641 days to foreclose. Okay. That's in Q1 alone. Longest average foreclosure days timeline in Q1. Those that went to foreclosure, the average time frame in Louisiana was 2,641. Means they're just kicking the can. You got to love that whole province way. Or that kind of the French legal thing. So that might be a reason why you're probably not going to want to buy notes in Louisiana, because it can take forever to foreclose. Hawaii, not really a surprise there because they've been hit so hard by tourism and stuff like that. They still haven't rebounded. 2,031 days. Okay. New York, all right, the Big Apple state. Not really surprised here, 1,958 days to foreclose. Nevada, this kind of surprised me. Nevada is 1,701 days to foreclose. And then the bluegrass state, Kentucky, in Q1, the average foreclosure that took place, it took them 1,701 days to foreclose. So that's definitely something to keep in mind. But like I said, that's the longest average foreclosure days timeline that showed up in Q1. So those that went to foreclosure, these were the longest time frames in those states. States are the worst. Okay. Now you look at the shortest. Aha, for real estate investors, this is a valuable thing to look at. Fastest foreclosure timeframes. A couple of these kind of surprised me, but then they didn't. This was for just Q1. Montana. All right. Montana was the fastest, an average of 123 days to foreclose across the board. Virginia came at number 2, 152 days, so basically from 4 months to 5 months. Texas came in at 163. Now, Texas, you can only foreclose in the first Tuesday of the month, and you've got to have your notice in by 21 days prior to that. So it's either going to be 21 days or like 51 days to kind of get the ball rolling. So average was 163. Wyoming came in at 191. And West Virginia was 217 days. So just over 7 months and basically a week for West Virginia. And I'd be willing to bet it takes place depending on where they're at and kind of how remote it is in West Virginia. But all of these are non-judicial states, faster foreclosure states for the most part. Okay. Now, some takeaways also from the report for March of 2024, just for itself. Okay. All across the country, you look at the numbers, it was 1 in every 4,286 homes had a filing. Okay. 1 in every just under 4,300 homes had a filing. Okay. There was 23,000 homes that started the foreclosure process in March. Now, that's up 3% greater than in February and down 4% year over year from this time last year. Okay. It's important to know. So it's up since February, down since the year over year. That's fine. But we see kind of that trending. It's changing ways than it was a year ago. Okay. There's also in March, okay, just last month, there was 2,700 REOs that were completed by banks and lenders where they finished the foreclosure. That's actually down 20% from February, from a month earlier. So things have actually slowed down a little bit. And that's actually down 44% from year over year. Okay. It's down quite a bit from last year. That was actually a surprise. But if you look at things, the trending side, if you think about last year, it would have been like a year after COVID was released and stuff like that, things taking place in 2022 to 2023. So you had all this bottleneck of loans that took place that it happened, and now it's been a little slower to take place now. Okay. The states that had the biggest amount of foreclosures, okay, states with the highest foreclosure rates: Illinois, 1 in every 2,548 homes. Connecticut, 1 in every 2,609 homes. I was really surprised about Connecticut. Okay. New Jersey, 1 in every 2,638 homes. Florida had 1 in every 2,779. And then South Carolina again, which we see Florida, South Carolina, and New Jersey showing it quite a bit, but South Carolina had 1 in every 2,867 homes. Remember, Columbia and Spartanburg were part of that aspect of this, two of the biggest cities there in South Carolina. So lots of great stuff there. If you'd like to get the full report to see how your state averaged and what the numbers were, you can go to this link, snip.ly/Q124 foreclosures. That's snip.ly/Q124 foreclosures. That's foreclosures with a capital F. We'll put the link obviously in the comment section, and take a look at it. I'd love to get your feedback, what you thought about it. If you get any surprise on the numbers, anything about this report surprised you, we're going to start doing this on a quarterly basis as they come out, because I know it's such great information for folks. Because I always get questions, where's the market at? Well, the market varies on where you're at and what's going on in that state, the foreclosure time frame, the amount of filings, all that good stuff is definitely dependent on individual characteristics taking place in your state. So go out there, everybody, have some fun, and hopefully we'll see you at the top. Bye, everybody.